So I recently did the AI for Medicine specialization, and I want to share my thoughts and do a comprehensive review of this specialization. So I even got some notes here, and what I want to go into is basically go into more depth on the courses and what is focused on and what I felt that I actually learned from those. So that you also can get an expectation if you're considering taking the specialization. Then I want to go into my thoughts on the prerequisites and my thoughts on the structure when it comes to the video lectures and the labs, quizzes, and then the programming assignments. Then I want to nitpick on a few details that I think can be improved maybe. And then I'll give my summary and my rating of this course. So first of all, it's AI for Medicine specialization. It's offered by the deep learning. It's by the deeplearning.ai, and then it has a average rating of 4.7, which is a relatively high. It's not the best or sort of the highest, but it's relatively high. And then it has over 1,600 ratings, which is not that many. So it might not be a very popular specialization, because if you look at like the deep learning specialization, it has over 120,000, I believe. But so let's go to and look at each course. So it's structured it has 3 different courses. The first one being AI for medical diagnosis, then AI for medical prognosis, and lastly, AI for medical treatment. And this sounds really good. You have AI mixed there, and then you have, the diagnosis, prognosis. I don't know, it just sounds good. A lot of buzzwords. And that's why I also want to go into a little bit more depth. So what I thought we could do is just look at the first course and what you'll actually learn about. All right, so here I have the first course, AI for Medical Diagnosis. It's structured in 3 different weeks. And what you'll learn in the first week is essentially that you'll use CNNs to classify different lung disorders. And yeah, that is pretty much it. And that's what you'll focus on a little bit here, as you can see, on like loss functions and stuff like that. But and also like different CNN architecture, very, very briefly. And then in the second week, it's more about sort of using better evaluation metrics than accuracy. So you learn about sensitivity, specificity, a positive predictive value and negative predictive value, stuff like that. And then that's pretty much it for week 2. Week 3, you'll learn about segmentation and image segmentation using unit architecture, and then 2D and 3D unit. And so what you'll do for the assignment is kind of that you'll use the segmentation model to detect and do segmentation maps of brain tumors, potential brain tumors. And, this is really awesome. And I think that's, it's extremely interesting, very interesting application, but and that's a positive. Drawback of that is that in many ways it can feel superficial. Like when I say that you're using UNet, you really are just using UNet. You're not building it yourself. So there are many layers that sort of is beneath you, and you're just building on top of those. And in that way, it can feel like you didn't really do it, and that you're not sure if you really understand it. So that's a recurring theme, is that things can feel superficial in a way. And just an example of that, when we're talking about units, for example, basically, the video is 2 minutes long. And so you can, now there's a lab here. It's not 1 hour. It takes and there's no code. We'll go into that later on. Basically, you can just imagine if it's a 2-minute video lecture on it, how much depth can there be? Anyways, for the second course, medical prognosis. So the entire idea of the medical prognosis course, which is structured in 4 different weeks, is that essentially that we'll be able to predict sort of the risk score and the survival probability of a particular patient. And so if we go into a little bit more depth, so in week 1, you'll get an introduction to medical prognosis, what it is. And so like an example of that is that you'll evaluate what is the risk score for a particular patient on a 10-year period. And then you'll also do other things like combining features using pandas and things like that. In the second week, you'll do decision trees. So you'll learn about decision trees. And then you'll also spend, that's pretty much 50% of the time. And then the other half is dealing with NANs in your data set using pandas. And then week 3, you'll look at sort of survival models that are not only just limited to risk score on 10 years. It's sort of, you can make it more flexible in a way that what is the probability of a patient surviving past a certain time threshold, for example. That is what's focused on week 3. Then, and different estimators you can use for that. Then in week 4, you'll basically, I think you'll go into random forests model, and then also different survival models where you can actually compare the risks of different patients. So, we can compare what is the risk factor for patient 1 compared to patient 2, and then also what features actually impact the risk score. So we could ask a question like, how much does smoking impact the survival probability or the risk score? And that is essentially what you learn in this course, in the medical prognosis. And so it's really, again, it's interesting. You get an idea, an overview of many of these aspects, and of the methods used as well. So it's good in that way. Again, it can feel a little bit scattered, perhaps, and for example, since they're not assuming knowledge about pandas or anything of that kind, well, you kind of have 3 options. So the first option is you do a superficial overview of all of those things, since you're not assuming either, right? You're not assuming previous knowledge of those areas. The second option is perhaps that you do a lot more material and you cover those in depth. And the third that I view is that you assume on those previous knowledge, and then you can build more in-depth but be very specific. On those 3 options I just laid out, the first option is what I think they chose for. And I'll go into my thoughts on the video lectures later on, but you can just see here, right? It's a 1 minute, 2 minute, kind of short, and it's hard to go very much in depth on many areas if you when that is the case. And then we finally get to the last course, and it might sound like I'm being negative, and there are cons or negatives of it, but I hope you also see that this is an interesting area, and that is what I feel I got the most from those courses. And so let's look at AI for medical treatment, which is basically, this is perhaps also a little bit scattered, sort of different things. And I'm not really sure always if the title is reflective of the material. But if we look at week 1, for example, this is using sort of statistical methods and on comparing. So let's say one group got a particular medicine and the second group didn't get that medicine. Then how do we check how effective, how efficient the treatment is in this randomized controlled trial? So that is essentially what this week is about, and that is it's to me, which I don't have any experience in medicine previously, it's just interesting to get an idea of, in a sense, of how this works. So in that way, I think that this is really interesting. In the second week, this was perhaps surprisingly about NLP, which so it's about like question answering and using BERT models, which is, I don't know how that's so surprising to get that. And also about cleaning text. And basically, mostly the assignment was about you get text and you want to extract labels for your machine learning model using a rule-based NLP method to extract those labels. But yeah, if you know anything about BERT or transformer models, it's impossible to go into much depth on this. This is sort of just like, hey, it exists, and that's okay, I guess. but just know that it's not very in depth. And then also you have this precision and recall and F1 score. Not sure why that isn't in the second in the first course on the second week, which had those other specificity, sensitivity, and stuff. That should probably be there, but it's here for some reason. I don't know, they probably had some reason for that. And then in the third week, it's about sort of understanding and evaluating machine learning models. And so how can we understand like how important a specific feature is using this machine learning, sort of the black box approach. And then they go into different methods of how we can do that, of the feature importance and so on. And then also they go back a little bit to these CNN models to be able to compute heat maps and see what the CNN is actually looking at in the original image. And so in this way, you can imagine we get a sense and an understanding of being able to visualize what the CNN is focusing on, which can get some understanding of the model. All right, now that was a sort of a semi-in-depth overview of the actual content of each course, and so you can have an expectation. So let me just look a little bit about this right here on the sort of the prerequisites of this. So they say that you should be able to program in Python, and I completely agree on that. There's a lot of Python in this specialization. And then it also says that you should be comfortable with statistics and probability. I did not feel it was very much statistics and probability. Sort of the very basics of an introductory statistics course is probably sufficient, like knowing conditional probability, intersection and union, stuff like that. Pretty basic stuff. And then they mentioned that the deep learning specialization is recommended but not required. So really they don't have that much prerequisites at all. And that is a good thing and a bad thing. So the good thing is that anyone can take it. The bad thing is that you are in many ways restricting what you can actually teach, because you have to go into so many areas if you're going to make everyone happy. And I think personally that they should make the prerequisites much stricter. So the deep learning specialization should be required, and make, even raise the bar on some things so that you can make more in-depth, a more in-depth specialization, so that at the end you feel like, wow, I'm actually pretty competent in this particular area. And now it's more like, hey, I got an introduction and an overview of this, which is awesome and interesting, but I don't feel useful. And so that is just one idea and one thought I have about this prerequisites, because it kind of sets the standard for the course. And as I've already mentioned, like there are many things that are brought up, but you don't go into depth on any of those, but you will understand some applications of AI in medicine. All right, now I think that was probably ranting a little bit too much. So let me now go to my thoughts on the video lectures, right? So each, or the structure of the course. So the structure is one that is pretty standard across many different courses. So if we just look at course 1, for example, at week 2, then you have video lectures, as you've probably understood by now. You have some videos, then you have a practice quiz, or this is graded, but this is a quiz at the end of the week, and then you have a programming assignment, and this is the case every week. Then in some cases you also have a lab, and I can't actually view it now because my subscription has passed. But essentially, so you'll have the videos that goes explain some topics, and let me focus on that actually. So the videos, first of all, the main point is that they're short. They're like incredibly short, in my opinion. Like if we just take this week, for example, it's 3, 7, 9, 11, 12, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, like 20 minutes of video for an entire week. All right, that's not much. That's very, very little. And compared to I looked at a few weeks of the deep learning specialization, and it's pretty much like 3 or 4 times as long. So it's a lot more material. And yeah, so that is one thing about the videos, is that they're not very bulky at all. They're very short. And to me, I think you should just, like, for example, like, I don't even watch full screen of the videos, because it's like 1 minute and then you're gonna watch the next one. So I just leave it sort of at the semi full screen. And I prefer just having one video that is like 10 minutes perhaps, and then I can just have my notebook, pause it, and then, actually go through it, feel like I'm going through something that has a lot of material in it. And then in many cases, there are pop-up questions for specializations on Coursera. In this one, it's very few, and it might be because it's so short, like the videos. And I think that they should just have longer videos and have pop-up questions, because I think that really increases the retention, at least for me. So that is something that I would like to see. And yeah, one other negative thing, so a good thing of the videos being short is that you can get straight to the point, like to the point videos, which is good. But I've touched on some of the drawbacks, and another drawback is that you don't really get a good connection, or like, it's very difficult to get a connection with the lecturer when it's so short. And I think a longer format would help a little bit with that. So yeah, let's see. So then after the videos, you have these labs, for example. So this is like they've written code for you pretty much, and you just go through the code, run different cells in a Jupyter notebook, and then basically try to understand the code. And in many ways, or many parts, that code is also useful for the assignment, like parts of that code. Then let's see, so you have a practice quiz, like 9 or 10 questions, something like that, to make sure that you actually understood the material from the week. And I think the quizzes are awesome. They ask questions that are good, on the correct level, and I felt like I learned from the quizzes, and they were good in my opinion. The programming assignments also in general are very good. Sort of, there's it's difficult because the variance is so high. Sometimes the video lectures don't really match the content of the programming assignment. Sometimes the video lectures could be incredibly easy, and the assignment is incredibly hard, or there's a lot of things in it. Sometimes you get a lot of hand-holding, like they pretty much do it for you, and you're supposed to write one line. Sometimes they give you a massive function that has many parts and ask to implement it. So it's high variance, but the expected, like the mean value is very high. Yeah, that is pretty much what I think about the structure of the course. Just some details that I have, few nitpicky details, is that the programming assignments, like the automatic grading, doesn't always work perfect. And I've seen other people have issues with that as well, where they mentioned that. So for example, one experience I have is that I used NumPy to subtract some mean or something from a pandas data frame. And then in the automatic grading, I didn't succeed in that particular function. And that is because they didn't find me using pandas for it. And so I think they're searching for sort of specific methods that they want you to use. And yeah, it's pretty much a non-issue, but sometimes you can run into some minor issues with the automatic grading. Then another thing I wanted to bring up is that you have discussion forums, which are useful in the way that you can basically see the similar problems that you have and if there are any replies. But I don't think you can expect to get instantaneous feedback in any way. So your expectation should be that you're on your own pretty much when you take the course. But these are useful in a way that other people might have had similar issues in the past. Another small detail is that there on the video lectures, the audio is not always perfect. And I'll play some clip perhaps of what as an example.
Of which only 30% had diabetic retinopathy. We'll look at this data imbalance problem.
And you might not hear it if you have bad headphones. If you have better headphones, you're probably going to be able to hear it. There's a lot of crackling sounds, at least for me, which makes it difficult to listen to in many parts, unfortunately. And I think this should be pretty easy to fix in future specializations that if you're watching the deep learning AI team, just run the audio through RX-7, RX-8, some audio software where you can clean up crackling and all that stuff very easily. Or maybe perhaps build a neural network, All right, let's bring this all together. And if you didn't watch the entire video and just want a summary and nice, clean, no time waster, then what I'm gonna say is that this specialization is awesome to get an overview and understanding of machine learning and statistical methods used in medicine, and it's really interesting, and it has really cool applications. The drawback is that you will not be competent in those areas, and you will not feel very knowledgeable or that you're an expert at all. So the drawback is that it's very superficial in many aspects, and so that's the balance. All right, so when editing the video, I noticed that I didn't give it a rating, and I would give it 7 or 7.5 out of 10, where the deep learning specialization would be, for me, close to a 10 out of 10. Yeah, if you do consider taking this specialization, if you feel like it could be interesting, then please use the link in either the comment section or the description of the video. In that way, you'll support the channel, but it doesn't cost any additional for you. Anyways, thank you so much for watching the video, and I hope it was useful to get a better understanding of this specialization. Take care, guys, and I hope to see you in the next video.